Hey everyone, welcome back. I am going to talk about the Pure Audio Project Duet15 horn speakers. Before we get going on the Duet15 horns, let me just catch up my history with horn speakers. It goes back to the 90s for me, mid-90s I'd say. Maybe it was 96, I'm not sure of the year. Maybe it was 98 even. I remember seeing a pair of speakers, the Avant-Garde Unos. Now these had a big horn up top, a middle driver, and a powered sub at the bottom. They had a metal framing. They looked a little bit artistic, a little bit modern, a little bit industrial, but the looks of these speakers really caught my eye. And I remember reading about them saying they're great with all music. Even AC/DC was sounding amazing. I went to a dealer's house back in the day. I'd say it was 1998 maybe. I went to, it could have been even a different year, but it's around that time. Went to Upland, California. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And I went into a Mr. Kevin Deal's home and to his living room, and he had this set of Unos just up against the wall placed together. The next room over, he had all his tube gear because he sold gear. He still does sell gear. And he had the Duos set up in that room. And he told me, oh, those are my favorite speakers right now. They were a beautiful blue color. I sat in that spot for a minute and I listened, and they sounded heavenly. They sounded really good. He had some Ricky Lee Jones playing, I think, Coming Back to Me off of Pop Pop. And I had my friend with me. He's like, whoa, these sound really good. But back in the 90s, I wasn't fully versed yet on how everything worked and how synergy was a thing and how room setup was a thing. So I went out there and I said, I'll buy those Unos. They were his demos. I think they were $7,800. Kevin walks out in his pajamas, which was cool, real guy. Give him $7,800 cash. He counts them out on top of a box. Helps me load them into my van, or maybe Jared. He had a guy named Jared working for him, I believe. Helped me load them into my van. Away I went home. I set them up and I put them in place, and I just admired the beauty of these speakers. They just look so unique, and I love unique. People would come over and say, wow, those are some crazy speakers. But I had to find an amp for them. These were really easy to drive, and I wanted to power them with a tube amp, something that was really beautiful but low powered. I contacted Gordon Rankin at Wavelength Audio at the time, and he made me a pair, I think they were called the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken, of monoblocks. They were 300B amps. And it took a few weeks to make them. And in between that time, they sent me a Duetto. I think it was the stereo version, just to try out. And the Duetto sounded really good with those horn speakers, but there were some things that I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to dig these long term. Long story short, the Cardinals came, hooked them up, and what I heard, I was not happy with. I heard a lot of coloration, and horns tend, especially horn speakers of the past, tend to have a lot of that coloration, the megaphone effect. And that kind of takes away from the music a little bit when it's really has that kind of effect. To add to that, the bass from that powered subwoofer was barely putting out any bass. So I was hearing a lot of that upper end, which does and did become fatiguing. Now, I did love live recordings on these. They sounded absolutely alive and live, but it was the bass that was lacking. And later, I found out in life, it was just the room I had them in. It was a big open living room area that was open to the kitchen, and it just was not a good space for those speakers. That space did not allow the bass to flesh out, and I didn't even try positioning them. I just put them up against the wall. I think I had a source of a CD player, maybe a Levinson CD player. I don't remember the model at the time. But over time, I was like, I grew fatiguing of this sound. And I was like, I don't know if horns are for me. 2 years later, I sold them. Over the years, I tried various horn speakers, mostly from Klipsch, Cornwall 4, Cornwall 3, Heresy 4, Heresy 3, Forte 3, Forte 4. And I really enjoyed all those Klipsch speakers, but some of those speakers, the Heresies, 3s, the Cornwalls, to some extent, they still had a little bit, just a little bit of that coloration. But overall, the Klipsch speakers have come a long way since the old days, like their new models, the La Scala AL6, even the AL5s had very little of that coloration, but the La Scalas have a weak point, which is the bass. In any case, time goes on, not too long ago, I reviewed the Audio Icon 12s. Now, these are stunners of a speaker, but they're almost 24,000 US dollars. They are a horn design with a big 12-inch woofer, and they deliver anything and everything I could ask for, as I said in the review, from a whisper to a roar. They could strike like Thor's hammer. You know, these are beautiful speakers, but they're very expensive. They're a little bit large, and they're pretty heavy. They're 120 pounds each. I still have these speakers. I acquired them for my main reference system. But over the last few weeks, I've been listening to these Duet15s, the horn model. Now, previously I reviewed the Duet15s with the Voxactive 1.6 driver, and I love that speaker to death. I think it's an amazing value if you're looking for an open baffle kind of sound. Now, these are open baffle speakers. And when I was asked if I wanted to review the horn version, I immediately got excited because I really, still in my heart, love horn designs. That's why I bought the Icons. Now, the Icons have zero coloration in their voice. They are just beautiful. They project beautifully. And I was curious if the Duet15s, at almost 1/3 the cost, could deliver a similar smooth, fuller-bodied horn kind of sound. And I wanted to know if I would like this horn more than the Voxactive 1.6, because I declared the Duet15s with the Voxactive 1.6 to be speakers I will keep for a long time. And one of you, I just heard somebody laugh out there. No, seriously, I've had them since I bought them. I have no desire to move them. They are so good. And I feel that way about the Icons as well. But I was curious if the horns would sound a lot different from the 1.6 or just a little bit different. And one cool thing about Pure Audio Project, if you're someone who have bought the Duet15s with one of the other drivers, they allow you to upgrade to the horn version. You just simply buy a new baffle, you buy the horn, you keep your current bass drivers, your current frame, your current feet, and you also get the new crossovers. So you can order these and simply disassemble your other version, to take the bass driver out, put it into the new baffle, because the horn version does require a different baffle. So anyway, all of this arrived over a period of 2-3 weeks when you order from Pure Audio Project. If you didn't see my first video of the Duet15s, you can watch that, because I go over building them, putting them together, the ordering process, and all of that. I won't rehash that here. But I swapped the parts from the older version into the newer version, and within less than an hour, I had the Duet15 horns. And the first thing that struck me was, wow, these look awesome. I just love the way horn speakers look. My wife said, oh, it looks like lips are protruding out of the top. And I was like, yeah, well, they still look cool to me. And I love how you can customize your baffle color, all of that. I got sent the black baffles, and I think it looks really striking with the wood grain of the horns. You do have to assemble the horns. That takes a good 5 minutes each. Very easy. Pure Audio Project gives you a graphic interface manual. Once you buy them, they send you a link. You log in with your password they give you, and it's really easy step by step to put these together. So once assembled, I put them in the system, and I had a variety of amplifiers to test with these. I had tube, low-powered tube. I had a tubed preamp, a solid-state amp. I have Class D GAN amps. I have Class A B amps, Class A. So you name it. I wanted to try these with everything to see what sounded the best. I was even experimenting with DACs and noticed a pretty big difference between two DACs with one type of DAC I'll tell you about. That you can get in a lot of different DACs. I should say a DAC chip that sounded remarkable with these. But when I first put them in, I had the Luxman 509Z in, because that's here for review as well. And that came from Dan at Dedicated Audio in Scottsdale, Arizona. Thanks to Dan. I'm taking my time with the Luxman because I don't want to send it back. It's really something. But anyway, when I first turned them on, I had the Luxman 509, I had my Nagar streamer, and the Live Harmony Micro DAC. Turned it on, and there was a little bit of, the bass response was very shy, and there was a lot of things coming out of that horn. And then I sent a picture of the crossovers to Pure Audio Project, Zev over there, and I had put it together a little bit wrong. I misplaced one of the capacitors or something. That's another thing. The crossovers come in parts, and you screw them into the board. You screw each part into the board. It's very, very easy. If I could do it, anyone can do it. It only takes a few minutes, but my eyesight's bad. I can't see up close. I didn't have my readers. I put one of the wrong pieces in the wrong places, and it sucked all the bass out. So he said, oh, no, just swap this for this, and you'll be fine. So I swapped it, and the bass was back. And I was like, oh, thank goodness, because I didn't want to tell him that I'm not going to review these if there's no bass, right? Anyway, it all worked out, but still that top end was a little bit bright. And he told me that without question, without fail, no doubting it, these horns take 150 hours to fully smooth out. Now, a lot of you don't believe in burn-in. I'm even a skeptic of burn-in because I've heard speakers, old and new side by side, that sounded 99.9% the same. But here I was like, okay, I'll take him at his word. I let them run 24/7 for a week straight. They were just running in here nonstop. This room back here got pretty hot because the Luxman, while it doesn't run hot, it can get a little warm. But anyway, after that week, there were times I stopped them where I had to listen to something else that I was reviewing. But overall, I did go through the full 150 hours of burn-in on the horns. And I will tell you, once they were done, the sound was quite a bit different. That horn was much smoother. There was a fuller bodied sound coming out, and the details were more organic, but I'll get into that in a bit. So listening with the Luxman, we'll do that first. The Luxman 509Z. I'll just say what sounded the best with the Luxman. Now, I recently received a streamer DAC from Orchard Audio. It's their premium streamer and DAC. And inside this DAC, they use AKM DAC chips. I can't off the top of my head remember the model. But first I had that Ever Solo A62 Master Edition, right? And first I tried the DAC in that. They sounded a little bright with that streamer going into them, just a little bit. I then added the Orchard Audio as a DAC with the A6 as the streamer. And holy wow, the sound just warmed up. It became richer, musical, beautiful details. It felt like a big hug coming to grab me. I then took out the A6 Gen 2 and put in the Nagra streamer, and that effect was taken even higher. If you guys think streamers don't make a difference, the Nagra streamer is something to behold sound-wise and performance-wise. But it's a streamer that's not for everyone because it's pretty basic. So that's where I left the streamer in DAC with that Luxman 509Z. The sound, oh my goodness, the voices. Now, Pure Audio Project on their website says these are magical with jazz vocals, acoustic instruments. They say rock sounds like a live event. I was trying these with everything. Now, I will say when I tried these with rock with just the Ever Solo going in, it was a little harsh. But with that, the AKM DACs in that Orchard streamer, with either the A6 doing the streaming or the Orchard doing the streaming, because that's a streamer as well, or the Nagra doing the streaming, the Nagra sounded the best. Man, those voices when listening to jazz. I'll go back to the standards. I really don't listen to her much, but I do for evaluating gear. The Look of Love, Diana Krall, that album. And the song, The Look of Love even. Any song on that album can tell you how good your system sounds with jazz vocals. Now, this was a very rich performance. Her voice was coming forward out into the room. With the Vox Active 1.6, they were a little more even with the speakers while still presenting some depth and three-dimensionality. The Vox Active is a little richer in the mid-band, it feels like, it sounds like, where the horn just kind of takes her voice, brings it out, and it's kind of there in the middle, floating, singing to you. And the instruments with those AKM DACs were just, they sounded real. They sounded juicy and full. And I said right then and there, wow, these are beautiful for the human voice. Bass-wise, they were still ever so slightly light, but that's compared to box speakers. These are open baffle speakers. Bass in open baffle speakers is completely different from a box speaker. These speakers, I can place them anywhere almost in this room and get good sound, but you do want to take care in placing an open baffle speaker. You want to pull them at least a foot away from the wall. I have mine 3 feet away from the wall, and at least a foot or 2 from the side walls. Angle them in towards your ears a little bit, but not a direct toe in. Just maybe, a little bit towards your ears. Sit in the center. Mine were 8 feet apart. I sat 7 feet from them, and it was just a beautiful experience. As I went on, I wanted to hear what rock music sounded like. And just this morning, I was listening to the new Sammy Hagar song, the one where he said Eddie Van Halen visited him in a dream, told him to write this song. And I think it's one of the best songs he's made in a long time. It's called Encore, Thank You, Good Night. And it starts off with like a EVH solo in the beginning by Joe Satriani. And those strings, I heard each one so clearly. And again, they were kind of out into the room. And when I was waiting, I was telling myself, when these guitars kick in, my guess is it's going to sound a little thin. But man, when that guitar kicked in, the bass filled everything out. And I'm getting goosebumps now. Who gets goosebumps, right? I get goosebumps sometimes from listening, and remembering that memory is giving me the goosebumps again. And I was like, wow, I didn't think these would sound that good with rock music. So they sounded really, really good. Now, again, let's go back to these speakers a little bit. They're highly sensitive. So you can drive these with just a few watts per channel. You can drive them with high watts. Let's take the Luxman out and replace the whole system with a couple of 500 watt per channel Class D GAN amps, Orchard Audio Star Crimson monos, and I used their streamer and DAC, and that was the complete system. Now this streamer and DAC is meant to go direct into amps. It's really made to synergize with those Star Crimson amps. And synergize, it surely did. Now, I don't want to review the streamer here because there are a couple things I don't like about it, but sound quality is not one of them. With this combo, the sound was a little bit warmer, not as detailed in the top end because the Luxman, this 509Z, really excels in bringing forth details in a juicy, fat way. And the Z series is a little bit warmer than the X series. I'll say that for now. To me, this sounds like a 590 AX2 on steroids with more power, but a little bit more refined. Beautiful, beautiful sound. But this Class D GAN, it was bringing an even smoother sound. The bass was a little more bigger, right? So the Star Crimson monos were bringing a little bit more bass. The sound was smoothed out more, and it just sounded so pleasing. I lost a little bit of that all-out three-dimensionality of the Luxman, but overall they sounded beautiful with that amp, those amps as well. I took those out and I brought in a Black Ice FX10H. Now this is a little teeny amp. It puts out a few watts. It uses EL84 tubes, and it sounds more powerful than you think it would. I put it in, and it was plenty of power for these. It's under 10 watts, or maybe around 10 watts. I can't remember off the top of my head, but here the sound was, it gave a little bit of that tube flavor that you may know about or have heard about. A little more holographic, but just a little bit. A little more open. The voices were a little bit more textured, but the bass was a little bit leaner. So far, the bass winners were those Star Crimson monos, right? So then I'm like, let's just go all out high end. I put in a Nagra Classic amp with the Nagra HD Pre. And that sounded organic, beautiful, warm, a little bit warm. I'm not saying warm as in dull, just some of that humanity is added, that glow. The Nagra Classic amp has kind of a glow to it and a little bit lit up in the details, but the mid band is a little bit warm and the bass is fantastic. Now this probably was the most refined, finest sound, but the retail of these pieces is like $90,000. The Luxman was getting 95, 98% there. No joke. The Luxman 509Z is one heck of an integrated amp. overall, listening to all these combinations, I didn't know which one I really liked best, but I put the Luxman back in because I have to review that soon. And that combo of the Luxman with the Niagara Streamer, the coax out, going into the Orchard Audio DAC or any DAC. I think these just sound so good with those AKM DACs. AKM DACs are much more musical, organic, analog sounding versus other DAC chips. And that's what I have found. The Eversolo A10, for example, uses those DAC chips, and it sounds the same way. Beautiful, rich, organic, analog, but also highly detailed and resolving. I ended up listening to that combo the rest of the time with these speakers. And by the way, I'm keeping these speakers. I'm keeping both sets of duets. And I'll probably always stick with the horns. I don't know if I'll ever go back to the 1.6, but maybe I will. I'm not sure. I just really have fallen in love with the horn Duet15s. One other thing I like about the Duet15 horns is they're easy to move. They're not too heavy. You can grab the frame with each hand and move it. So when you're placing the speakers and trying to get them set up, it's pretty easy to do. The crossover uses all high quality parts. There's nothing cheap about them. And if you look at the back of the speaker, once you get that crossover in, it sits in kind of a foam placeholder so it doesn't move and there's no vibrations. So I was listening on and on and on. I was listening daytime, nighttime, at night. These are low volume champions. With the Luxman, I would just have to turn it up a little bit and I was still getting the projection of the voices. I was still getting a little warmth in the midband. I was listening to live performances. There's a Rick Springfield CD called Alive. I had it back 20 years ago. And my wife loves Rick Springfield. So we threw on this Alive, not via CD, but we streamed it. And, you know, he sings all of his greatest hits from the 70s, from the 80s, whatever. And they sounded really good. And when the audience cheers, there's a song called Free, I'm Free. And when the audience sings it, this whole room just filled up with a choir of people singing, I'm free. It was pretty cool. And it was pretty like we were there at the concert. And that's why I always love horns. They bring a sound that's a mixture of live, right? Like you're really there with the performer, and a performance that's exciting. And even if you play something like I was playing Mel Torme, an old classic, I think it's from the 50s, called Round Midnight. There's these little piano bits in there, and they just chimed so well, right? Like the chime was there. Much better sounding piano than with the Vox Active driver. I will say that piano sounds like a piano. So all around, beautiful, beautiful speakers to look at, beautiful speakers to experience. I've had family members come over and they're like, where are those from? I've never seen speakers like that. And so really, there's nothing to not like about these. The horn, once burned in, is not aggressive at all. Horn 1 is a smooth operator, but out of the gate, when you first hook them up, they might sound a little bit bright and that might be a little bit thin in the midbands. Have patience. Let them run. Just listen to music. You don't have to let them run 24/7. Just let the process play out over time. And I think you'll be sitting there with some magical moments to remember, just like I have. So I'm keeping these speakers. I'm sorry, they're not going back. They'll be part of my stable here. But how do they compare against, say, a Klipsch Forte 4? Forte 4 is a horn design. It has a bass driver, though it has a passive radiator in the back for even more extension, and it is a closed enclosure. Now, the Forte 4 will have a little bit more bass kick, like hit, but the Duet 15 horns will sound smoother and quite a bit more refined up top. The Duet 15 horns, to me, are like if you want to upgrade from your Klipsch Heritage Forte 4s or Heresy 4s. This is a good speaker to upgrade to. And don't be afraid of open baffle. I talked to some people and they're saying, I don't know if I want to go open baffle. I'm afraid there'll be no bass. No, that's not true. These put out a natural, realistic bass. You're not hearing that flabby, floppy, loose bass that overhangs and kind of messes with your mid-band and your treble, this blends perfectly with the mids and treble. It's open, they're big, they're large, they can fill a space, but these have really none of that coloration or anything that will irritate your brain when listening. They're absolutely beautiful speakers. Now, these are in the range of, I think, around $6,900, $7,000, and that is an absolute fair price. And the reason they cost that is because you're buying direct from the manufacturer. If these had a dealer, you'd probably be paying $14,000 for these, which is a lot more money. So buying direct, you get to save that. And this is a very, very fair price. I could see these being 12 grand easily. Now, they look cool. I have mine with the Isoacoustics feet. That is an upgrade. I highly recommend the Isoacoustics feet. I had the originals at first, and once I got those Isoacoustics feet, the imaging just kind of locked into place. Everything just sounded cohesive and good. What else can I tell you? You get to pick your own baffle color. And other than that, it's a matter of assembling it, putting the parts on the crossover in the right places, and they send you graphics to do that. Very, very easy. And then you're ready to set them up and play. Now, these speakers do well with low power because they're easy to drive. They're very sensitive. But they also do well with high power. I heard somebody tell me, well, high power amps sound aggressive and ragged, and that's just absolutely not true. Those Star Crimson monos are smooth operators. They sound sweet as silk. Speaking of smooth operators, when I had them in, I pulled up Sade's live album that she did in 2011. And No Ordinary Love, there's a part in that song at the end where the guitar, they do a big power chord at the end. And with some speakers, that power chord is just boom in the room, three-dimensional, and it just sounds so good. But not all speakers reproduce that part in that way. The Duet15 horns do. And when that guitar part came and I knew when to expect it, it was just like whoosh, shot at me, and I was like, whoa, that is so cool. All while staying clean, clear, and extended and rich. Tried these with EDM. You turn them up, these things can kick you in the butt and sound beautiful, but retain that organic bass sound. There's nothing else I can say about these. They're beautiful speakers. They're some of my favorites of all time. I have a list of favorites. You know, I don't have just one favorite. I have a list of them, and these are in that list. I love the Voxactive driver as well. If you want a little bit, not as much projection with vocals, if you listen to mostly rock and metal, go with the Voxactive. If you listen to everything else, the horns do it very well. Not that they don't do rock and metal well, but I think the Voxactives have a little bit more beef in the mid-band for that kind of music. But even dance music, man, they were sounding amazing. So hats off to Pure Audio Project. I'm so glad they made this model. I always saw their Trio 15s, which are too big for this room, with the horn. And I said, man, I want those speakers. I want to try them so bad. But they were just too much for the room. I never had them here. But now that they make the Duet15 with the horn, they fit perfectly in this room, and they are just the right size. I would say small rooms, okay. Medium rooms, okay. Large room, go up to the Trio 15, because then you're adding basically a second bass driver to each speaker. I guess that's about it. I'll put links in the description below to Pure Audio Project, all the information. I am going to record a sound demo today and post that for members. There is a membership option here. It's $5, guys. And that is going to be what keeps this channel going, because I don't get paid to do reviews. So I get the little bit of money from Google, YouTube for the ad revenue, that commercial you skipped. Well, if you skipped it, I don't get anything, but it's very, very little. And I spend a lot of time doing this, but I love it. It's something I love. I'm not complaining. But if you want to see sound demos and first looks, I'm putting them in the members area now. And the link in the description below, it's right here at YouTube. It's $5, and it helps the channel keep going. I thank you all. I love you all. And I will see you in the next one very, very soon, maybe a day or two. I got to catch up. I got a lot of stuff coming in and a lot of stuff I still have to review. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll see you soon.